Holy Island. You get on it, you see the fish, you go directly for it. What if someone picked a civ that doesn't, like, let you go for the fish, though? What if they picked a civ that, like, gets in your way? Like, this annoying civ that we all hate, but secretly love, because they give you aggressive games that always end fast one way or the other. It is going to be Mongols, and a person that we love has returned. I feel like I haven't been able to see much of an Age of Empires 4 recently. Glad to have him back. I think he had a little bit of hiatus back on AoE 2, resurged love for it. But Kasva once again grinding on AoE 4 in prep for round 2 of Golden League, which means that players are starting with 12 villagers as opposed to the normal 6. We take the Holy Island for an English-Mongol matchup. A matchup that usually you'd favor the English here for many different reasons. The outpost rush being blocked for the Mongols is definitely one detail, but overall the way the English are able to play early men-at-arms and dictate late game or long-term flow on water has always seen them as kind of an S-tier civ, or bare minimum an A-tier civ on the Holy Island. In fact, the only reason they haven't been the dominant pick in round 1 of Golden League 2 is because the Rus with the new Kremlin build are proving to be the true Kremlins on this map. Let's see what Kasva can do, because he did go for a very early opening into his stables and immediately is out with the Horseman. Nice little play here. Problem is the fishing boats are already pushing. It's because Leenock went instantly for the dock. But you can now turn around and address this. Now, this is one of the problems you have if you're Leenock in this situation, is that the way this play works is typically you see a Rax reaction into Men-at-Arms, and Men-at-Arms in a stationary contest win against Horsemen. There is no doubt about it. I will never argue that. You'll never hear from me again. But what you'll hear from me on is the fact that you usually don't get a stationary engagement. In fact, at a high level, Mongol players can destroy English players because you just continue to spam Men-at-Arms versus Horsemen on each side. And naturally, the Horsemen, you end up with more of them because of the static generation from the stone. That then leads you into a situation where you might have these limping Horsemen almost dead, but every time they get close to dying, you just peel them back. And the Men-at-Arms are either already auto-targeted onto them, so they just idle running after a target, or they switch targets and then the injured Horsemen come back in. It's so infuriating to deal with. I mean, if anyone has ever tried chasing a knight with spearmen, you know exactly the type of infuriation that I'm talking about. So late dock coming in from Kasva. Leenock still has that fishing going on, and Kaz, because he still went back for the fishing, notice it's still only one Horseman here to harass. And one Man-at-Arms is on the way. Now, this is the situation where it's bad. You need to get at least 2 out here, because then you can pull aggro between the 2. And that's where things get interesting, because you're talking 8 damage versus 8 damage unit, 10 extra HP on the Horseman, and then obviously you got the free melee armor compared to none, but in a 2-on-1, it's not even close, folks. So Lee will be coming in with a second. Even pulls the villagers. Love this detail. Setting up an outpost. This might look like it's inefficient, but remember, once Leenock is parked out here with an outpost, with these 5 villagers, he can gather on the shoreline fish. They may have done this a little bit early. One Villy will be going down. I think you're kind of okay with that if you're Kasva. Like, you forced the pull of villagers, you idled them up, you killed one Villy, but you have now allowed Leenock to gather shoreline fish at a gathering rate of 1 food a second. Long term, it is definitely good, though. Like, long term, you've created the situation now where Leenock is gathering more food than he needs because he's got all these fishing boats already. Usually, you want all of your land eco on wood, maybe some gold as well. Kasva, speaking of that wood line, now with the Horsemen, considering where they're gathering wood, they are kind of on the edge, on the precipice of being out of range. This might be something that Kasva can try to exploit. But I love the first detail. Take out the scout. One of the biggest advantages of Horsemen this early on in the game. No other unit can gap close the scout. These bad boys, though, can eviscerate it. It's fortunate for Leenock, he did play back towards his base. This is something I think you should always take note of if you're not looking to be the aggressor and you have your scout. If you know you're up against someone like Horsemen, you should always look to play a little bit more frugal with where your scout places. Because if for example, if Leenock was on Kasva's side of the map and he got chased by these Horsemen, the scout never makes it back, he dies. But if he's like half distance from his map, from his TC rather, it's a short enough distance across the map that he should always get away. But, you know, complete micro. So many coming out from Kasva now. About to go up to 8 Horsemen. And the council hall is being built up here. Problem is he can't dive. Like, this is something that I know a lot of players are furious about constantly with doing the English. No other Civ turtles quite as well as they do in the early game. Other Civs, with this many horsemen, you dive in and you start sniping villagers. You do that trade, it kind of feels worth it. But up against the English, with the attack speed aura, with the short bows on the villagers, and the potential to garrison the town center and turn it into a Dark Age Gatling gun, there is no hope in hell of diving this. Awesome. We'll look to find their value elsewhere. They will move out towards the outpost. Oh, quick burn, though. Leenock, it's going to waste a lot of time here, but, you know, eventually these villages will be going down. There's just too many horsemen here. The men-at-arms, this is exactly what I was talking about. A bit of miss micro as Kazva is going to lose 2. I think that might be enough to stop Kaz. Yeah. Okay, that was really well played by Leenock. He targeted the right horsemen and forced them back. He killed, like, what, 3, I think? Injured 2 more heavily. That's a problem. So Leenock keeps the villagers alive. He pushes back against this. He keeps his fishing advantage, and now he has a tech-up advantage. Kazva now rushing up the Deer Stone afterwards, but these horsemen, even if you now upgrade them, some of them are just at death's door. And although there's a kind of like an incremental value right for the upgrade, you know, someone that's sitting at 2 HP is not going to benefit from you upgrading them anyway. Villagers going to be forced to pull back, and that formation shuffle will save their lives. Remember, we are now in Fuel Age, which means the English do finally get access to the Spearmen. Kazva will need to switch your rear if he wants to have some success. Horseman alone is no longer going to cut it. He also needs to be very careful the way he's laid his base. His Uvu is nowhere near his town center. If Leenock just continues to spam spears, he can just move in and block out all your double production. I don't like the fact that Kaz is still going hard in the horseman here, though. I know he wants to get rid of this dock, but you've reached the stage of the game where that's not going to happen, right? Galleys are in play. Not just galleys, springle ships as well. Interesting. Kaz was going for a little bit of an outdated build here. Now, if you remember, in the early days of the Navy changes, it very quickly became apparent like mass archer ships worked really well. Most of us will recall Magic versus Marine Lord, a game that Marine Lord wishes he could forget, where he got absolutely slapped on Mediterranean through sheer massive archer ships. And I remember, like, I had that kind of theory moving into the meta. I remember talking to Magic, and he was like, we have similar ideas. I was like, oh boy, someone's going to be spamming the archer ships. Eventually, people realized the solution is actually archer ships gradually win, but you need to reach mass. Springle ships early on should still be dominant. The problem with what Kazva done here is going trip archer ship before getting a springle ship, put him behind, and that's not a position you want to be in when you know that Leenock already has a fishing advantage. It's 9 compared to the 5. It's going to be more than that now that Leenock is setting up a second dock, as Kazva has also done. Remember, this is more cost-efficient long-term. This is why the English always look good on Holy Island. The early men-at-arms play into the fact that they have cheaper ships usually puts them ahead of most other civs here. Leenock still just turtling up as best he can, right? More spears. That's all he has to worry about on land. He thought about going longbows and then realized that Kazva was being one-dimensional. Kazu still just can't find a way in with these horsemen. Leenock. He's on the move. I love this. He's getting more aggressive with the dot placements. He wants to eventually have healing in battle. Fishing boats are going to be idled up. Lee will have to back away. Lee, who has less combat ships available to him. Needs to be careful, actually, because he could end up sacrificing quite a few here. Remember, he does have the advantage of just backing up a little bit to get healed. And oh, Kazvake is baited in. Okay, that was brilliant by Leenock. He pulled back at the right time. The Kazvake got a little bit too involved. Unfortunately, Leenock didn't realize how injured one of these ships was. Had an opportunity to take out one. Instead, he's on the edge of taking out 2. But too slow to gap close. Feels like this would have been a good time to maybe man the sails, but I think the risk there is you maybe take out 2 light junks, but then lose your Springwood instead. So instead, we're just forced to retreat. It's still decent for Leenock, right? When ships are this heavily injured, they have to idle at the backside, even when aggression comes their way. I'll tell you who's not idling around in Feudal Age. Kasva. He's heading up with the step readout. This is a very odd way that Hodan has been played. Typically, we see a very long Feudal Age with back-and-forth contests that force reinvestments onto water. It feels like both players didn't do that. However, Leenock, on a delay, is now going to commit to that. This has a big advantage for him, because if he times this right, he can shut down the food source that's meant to fuel the Castle Age for Kasva before he's able to truly use it. And he did want to use it. Look at it. It's a triple Rax drop. Mass Men Arms aren't cheap, folks. So tech up complete. Men at Arms and Spears moving in, looking to torch out the docks. And Kasva at a complete disadvantage here. He went too greedy. Leenock with the perfect read, the perfect timing, can take out the fleet and shut down the economy. And placements are trying to save the day. But if Leenock just circumvents this and goes straight after the fishing, Kasva, his eco is going to flatline. Remember, Leenock isn't at a disadvantage here. Not fully. Not to the extent that other civs would be. If he's up against Lancers, he still has Spearmen he's already been building. If he's up against Men-at-Arms, he can still delay the game with his Feudal Age Men-at-Arms. They will not win in one-on-ones, but it will be very close on the defensive with the attack speed buffer. All the fishing is going to be gone for Kasva. No way he's going to be able to rebuild. One longbow just trying to body block out is actually going to delay things a little bit, but the racks are double producing. Kasva on the clock to make this happen now that he's lost his food source on water. Leenock, he's starting to hoard a little bit here. It's not full Smeagol. He's at risk of featuring the Hobbit in some way. Decent amount of food and gold has been stockpiled. His intent has been made clear. The Men-at-Arms now coming out tells him exactly what Kasva's move is. MAA a very strong play at the beginning of Castle Age, but the moment you start doing it, you feel like you're on the clock. But that clock has been winded back. It's got a little bit extra time due to the fact that Leenock still has not teched up. Lee, who now realizes that he's the only player fishing in this game. Kasva now on the deer and on the clock. A finite number of Men-at-Arms available before he has to slow things down. He'll commit in. He needs to get more. This is the problem right now. If you're outnumbered like this, you lose this fight every day of the week, despite the fact you're so much more resilient. Leenock, well, he definitely has mass on his side. So many spears. Makes it look so trivial. Nice snipe on the Khan as well. Just small details like this. Leenock, he's milking this. Food being gathered up. It's going to be Castle Age on its way in the next minute. Like that now. And Rax being prepped. He says, okay, if you want to make this a one-dimensional slog, you're building Men-at-Arms against the English, my friend. It will not work. And Leenock is going up the White Tower. This is fantastic. White Tower over King's Palace any day of the week. I think it gives you so many great timings. It's going to be 2 additional military production buildings. He can use this to push even more Men-at-Arms, or alternatively, he can use this to push out Knights every 17 seconds. That timing is actually vicious, especially on a map that's open like this against a Civ that has no way of protecting themselves. Tech up complete. Leenock. We should start seeing a switch back into the Men-at-Arms shortly. Actually, no. Wow, he's just going mass spear still. I mean, the upgrade's worth it, right? At this stage, like, it's 350 resources, you have 17 units. It's impactful. The longbows is a bit more surprising, but he probably feels like he can just start a step back. And Kasva, well, he is reading that longbow play correctly. Maganel is being prepped. Makes me wonder how much Leenock wants to commit now that he knows this detail. This first Mango is going to come out and play. Now remember, fishing continues to boom up for Leenock. Leenock could even think about trade if he really needed it, but gold isn't going to be an issue for him. He's very cost efficient in that regard. Crossbows now also being prepped. Choke point control ensures that Kasva still cannot flood through. This Mango play finding 0 value. And Kasva are now running out of time. Dude, Leenock is so on point with this. I think that Maganel has not hit a single damn thing. He's lucky friendly fire doesn't exist, otherwise that's the only thing that'd be hit. Leenock is intentionally timing the charge towards the Men-at-Arms with the Maganel firing. and then backing away, which ensures that it just completely whiffs. There's lessons to be learned here, folks. I mean, Lee, we all know he's got the micro to be a king. He's definitely flexing on Casva right now. That attack speed already just extending. I mean, this is the problem. You're just not taking good exchanges. Crossbows on the backside, just enough to clean him up. I mean, this game is pretty much over. Casva has no real recourse. There will be a little pivot to take out the Mangonel that Leenock pushed, which is great. If you can kill it. Okay, that just hurts. Spring will at least get rid of it, but I mean, you've built a Ford Siege workshop, and even though you can pack it up and run home to your mama, the moment you have to do that, it kind of feels over. Mango finally gets a decent shot, but the price is going to be high. He's just about keeping it alive with the repairs. Leenock just doesn't care. He feels like he's playing with his food at this stage. Army's going to back up for the moment. Meanwhile, the Spearman on the backside is going to be sniped by a single Spearman. And when it all is said and done, folks, I mean, Leenock still has a dominant military advantage, eco advantage, every advantage. The reason Leenock backs up is he could try to end the game right now, but he realizes Kaza has to do it himself. Crazy that the Knights haven't been pushed out yet. I'm still waiting for that for Leenock. I think it would have been a great opportunity because the backside is completely undefended. He could have afforded it as well. Just sacrifice 3 to 6 Spearmen, get 2 Knights out. Instead, he just wanted to take this a bit slower. I don't know. I'm thinking more and more about Kaz's opening with a Horseman, and I'm just not convinced by it. I think the moment that his opponent walks those villagers out and builds an outpost, like, you need to just back off. You just can't do this anymore. You need to get, like, more naval. It's kind of weird that the Castle Age rush, like, punished him so much, right? Like, you'd think it would be a good play for him to end the game, but instead it's a GG the other way. I mean, just to kind of dissect that, by the way, the reason why you can't just naked fast castle like this is, like, you don't necessarily have anything immediately useful to end the game with. Like, you can't flood the base of the English with men-at-arms when you're up against the attack speed buffer, double TC fire, choke point control, and Spearman already showing. You see how impactful that attack speed can be with trivial units to defend. I think the big issue I see here is that instead of probing and seeing where Leenock was at on water, Casva essentially just stopped producing naval, stopped scouting naval, and then like blind fast castled. I think that's a very dangerous thing to do here, and it's a great preview as to why we frequently see players spam the crap out of Navy in Feudal Age on Holy Island instead of rushing Castle Age. You're sacrificing a lot to get there, and when your comp involves mass men-at-arms spam, you've got a question mark, where am I now replacing all that lost economy on water, right? Because Step Read out, although it's going to give me extra gold, it's not going to fix my food issue. What do you think, guys? I'm curious, actually, of people in chat. How many people would have made that same play from Casva? I don't even necessarily think he was chalked at the beginning. I think a lot of things actually played out really well for him. Like, there was kind of this awkward affair where Leenock should have killed 2 of his archer ships and put him fully on the back foot, double investing into keeping control of water, but he got away scot-free. It's kind of a weird one, I think. Maybe he could have pulled the fishing boats, repaired, and gone again, but yeah, very, very odd as the aggressive Civ to kind of take a more defensive approach there.